Welcome to EPC Conversations. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm delighted today to be joined by Sheila Gordon. She is in charge of children and family services at Crossreach, which is the charity arm of the Church of Scotland, who do an enormous amount of work up and down the country. And so I'm going to welcome Sheila. Thank you for joining us. And if you wouldn't mind telling us a bit about yourself and your role, just to get started.
Okay, thanks, David. I'm the Director for Children and Families, as you've said, and my role is wide and varied in Crossreach. We have a number of different children and family services. So we have a school at Erskine, and we have at the moment 7 children's houses, which are homes that we have either bought or rented in the community for children who are looked after away from home. They can't live with their families for various reasons, and many of these children attend the school at Erskine. Some of them don't, some of them go to local schools, so there's a variety. And at Erskine we also have some day pupils, so that's part of my remit. The other part would be we have services for children with disabilities across in Glasgow and Springburn, where we have a residential home there as well. We also provide respite, short breaks for children with disabilities, and a service that helps them link into community activities, and that's called Go2. We also have 2 prison visitor centres where we support families who are visiting prisons, sometimes for the first time, who are incredibly anxious, and other times they might be long-term visitors to a prison where they have a loved one to visit regularly, and we provide support and a listening ear in that situation in Perth and Polmont. And then we also have a number of different counselling services across Scotland, mainly based around Edinburgh, Glasgow and Inverness and Buckie. But we have a number of community hubs as well, and we provide counselling to hundreds of people every year across Scotland for perinatal mental health issues. We have generic counselling, we have recovery counselling, and we also do children and young people's counselling, some of that in schools as well. So it's quite a mix of different activities going on in Crossreach for children and families.
I'm sure our audience will be pleasantly surprised just at how much Crossreach do. I remember when I was training for Church of Scotland ministry, it was a huge eye-opener to start to learn the extent to which Crossreach is working in the country. And as you're talking there's a lot of services there that are looking to come in and help where people are really struggling, whether it's prison or counselling or families that have experienced difficulty. How, given the Crossreach is a charity arm of the Church of Scotland, how does it tie in, would you say, from your perspective, with the Church of Scotland's wider mission? Why do we have such a big charity arm?
Yeah, well, we see ourselves very much of doing our work in God's name, and yes, we're a Christian charity, and the staff in the main are of a Christian background, but we work with people from all faiths and from no faith at all, and we just like to think it's our behaviour, it's what people see and feel that shows our Christianity. And it's interesting because I remember a visit to Polmont Prison Visitor Centre where a couple of women had travelled many miles to do a visit by train, by bus and another train, and they did this pretty much every day to see a loved one in prison. And I always remember they described the staff at the visitor centre as angels. And I think it's sometimes when you realise that actually people have been touched by Christian love, and they might not be expressing it that way, but that's what they're feeling and experiencing in places like that.
That's an amazing story, and what an encouragement for those of us in the church to always wear our Christianity. Obviously, it reminds me of that verse in Hebrews that the writer of the Hebrews tells the folks to always have that disposition of hospitality because some have entertained angels without even knowing it. So that's a great example of that can actually happen. What about what I'm talking? If there's any common thread to this series, it's that I'm doing this as part of our church's continued life, because there's so much we can't do in person, and this program exists because of COVID. How has your work that you're doing been affected by COVID? What are the challenges it's brought, and how are you coping and adapting with that within Crossreach?
Yeah, it's brought us enormous challenges and some benefits. But generally, our services have been impacted in how they work face to face. Our counselling services had to very quickly rethink what they did and how they did it. So we very quickly had to get counsellors set up, first of all, with the ability to use telephones safely, so that they're phoning somebody with using an anonymous number. And we've moved to digital counselling. We've trained now 120 counsellors in a basic digital counselling platform, and we have another 40 or 50 counsellors all going through their full training, which allows them to be called cyber therapists, which is a great title, isn't it? So that's all been a huge steep learning curve for us all, and we now have a number of counselling sessions taking place every day online on using virtual means. So that's been a steep learning curve for us there. Our children in Erskine, they experienced something different there, and what we noticed was that with children not coming to school and having to stay in the homes that they live in with us, actually some of them, that was quite a benefit for them. School can be a stressful situation for children who struggle to learn or find the whole environment quite frightening. And in actual fact, what we found was that a lot of the children were much happier not having that pressure. They did, of course, do distance learning, and they did their lessons in lots of different ways, and we saw lots of outdoor learning going on. So that's, in some ways, that benefited a lot of our children. The main thing, though, that I've got to say, is our staff have just amazed me. People who are used to maybe running play sessions for children all of a sudden have become gurus at using Facebook and doing fun play activities on Facebook with mums and babies, across Scotland, and just seeing the talent of our staff being able to do something that's quite different from what they would usually be doing, and yet it's a way of engaging and keeping in contact with people. That's been really amazing to me.
And what kind of people do you get in your staff? Because, as I said, I remember when we were initially training and introduced to Crossreach, it was given to us as an avenue of, this might be somewhere you're trying to figure out your call to ministry, and this might be in the social care arm. So would you say that you do get people who come to work for Crossreach, and there is a sense of calling there, given what they end up doing?
Yeah, I suppose it's a mix, David. I think some people come to Crossreach because they have that faith, and they feel that they want to show their faith in actions as well as words. And then for others, they stumble across Crossreach because we have a very good reputation. We run very ethical and very good services, if I say so myself. And so people who are interested in social care want to work for Crossreach because they know that we're a compassionate and caring employer, and they enjoy working for us. We're not the best paying employer by any manner of means, but that's not always what people are looking for. They're looking for that comfort and a feeling of belonging that they get from Crossreach.
Yeah. And what about where do you see Crossreach in terms of the place that it has in the social uh, makeup that we find in Scotland today? What are some of the main things that you're having to address, challenges that come up that, unfortunately, that we are dealing with in 21st century Scotland, and where Crossreach come in, and let's say the situation would be a lot worse off if that wasn't there?
Yeah, I think one of the main things that we see in the families we work with is poverty, ever increasing poverty. And poverty is a relative thing, as we know. It's not necessarily about not having the basics in Scotland, a home to live in, but we see families that have to make choices between heating and food. We see children that don't get hot meals in a day, and during COVID in particular, that situation was enhanced. There's a project I actually forgot to mention when I was saying everything we did. We do have an early years project called Daisy Chain in Glasgow, and during COVID we managed to get some additional money from Peter Vardy, who gave us money to be able to provide food packs for these families. And a lot of the families who live in the Govan Hill area where Daisy Chain is based, a lot of family members there are working jobs that are casually paid, casual labour, and some of them are not entitled to benefits because they might be asylum seekers or in that system. And so they had literally no money coming in. And can you imagine yourself ever in a situation where you have no income coming into your home, yet you have 2 or 3 small children to look after? And so we had to step in there and assist with food packages, and also making sure that families did get access to emergency loans and provisions so that children didn't go hungry. And I got involved in that myself. I thought it was, it was a good thing to do, to be able to get out and about, and just seeing the wee excited faces at the door as you were taking both a food pack, and we also put in some fun activities for the family to do, whether it was painting or drawing or sometimes a ball to play games outdoors, simple things. A lot of these families were stuck in flats, in Govan Hill with no outdoor play space, so very difficult. But these are the very practical things, and poverty underlies everything that we do. Children in care, poverty will underlie their story as well, and it's an issue across the board.
And you're talking there that poverty's relative. And this is a bit like other conversations I've had with charity leaders in my role as minister, is that it is just devastating to think that there's that much as a so-called developed country as ours in the day and age we're in. But even though it's relative from a financial point of view, I'm guessing that you see other kinds of poverty, perhaps in terms of relationships and nurture, and you're stepping in to address that, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's right. Poverty itself can lead to dysfunction in families where the family functioning is chaotic, and in these situations it can be hard for relationships to thrive and sustain. So most of the children we work with have had disruption to early relationships, whether it's been children who have come to this country because they have been fleeing terror in another country, or whether it's children that have grown up in this country, potentially maybe with a parent with an addiction, and the child has then been passed from maybe grand to aunt into foster care, into a children's home, and has eventually ended up coming into one of our homes. Then that's the type of situation where children have often experienced multiple places that they've lived and grown up before they come to us.
And do you find, is there any kind of stigma within children in that system? I know historically there has been. Is there still, or do you find that that's perhaps improving with the improved visibility of the services of the likes of Crossreach?
I think there's some improvement, David, but we have experienced stigma directly. We wanted to open a children's house in Dumbarton, and we had found a suitable house. Now, we recognise now it's really important for children who have already experienced adversity. We want them to grow up in communities and feel a sense of belonging. We don't want them to grow up away out in the middle of nowhere. We want them to go to boys' brigades and join brownies and guides in the way that every other child does. So we had found this house in Dumbarton pattern we thought was suitable. But the hostility we experienced directly from the neighbours nearby was shocking. And, they insinuated that our children would bring the property prices down, that they wouldn't be safe anymore in their own homes, that the crime rates would rise, etc. And these are all the things that people assume about children in care, which is, so far from the reality. These are children that have been abused, traumatized, and moved repeatedly, and they deserve a chance and to be loved.
As you're talking there, it just reminds me of how countercultural and counter to a lot of our human nature Christianity as an idea is, in terms of looking to show compassion. We take it for granted that that's a good thing, but it's not always that natural to folks. And actually, a more natural reaction is often fear of people of the other, of those who are different to us, rather than embracing. So I think it's a good reminder that idea of creating community and reaching across to give an opportunity to people is actually quite radical.
Yes. It's so important for our children. People can do small things that make such a difference. So if you were to map out just now your own community, so you would start off with your family, then you would think about friends, but you would think about people like the postman that you maybe say hello to, and the newsagent shop you go into and you have a conversation, and the people that you know through church. So your map would be pretty full with all these little dots. But if you're a child who's been moved from pillar to post and has come in to live, say, in one of our houses, quite a distance maybe away from family and friends, you don't even have that little thing which might be saying hello to the postman in the morning, or knowing the newsagent down the road. You don't even have these little dots in your circles. So people coming in like yourself, going into the Erskine campus, taking the time to build relationships, you become, a very important little dots for somebody. Well, that's David who comes in and he says hello, and I think he probably cares for us a bit because he comes in, he makes the effort to come in. So it's really important. We've all got a role to play to become, these little dots in children's lives. And I just feel that these little dots are sometimes the ones that can make the difference in the years to come. They'll look back and say, oh, well, I didn't know whoever it is that well, but he believed in me, or he said something that was positive, or and people remember these things as they grow up.
Yeah, sure, and it's a good way to think about it. That sometimes it's not the big, massive gestures; it's small ones that accumulate to show someone that they're actually valuable. So yeah, that's incredible. What about yourself, Sheila? How did you come to this role and become interested even in doing something like this? What's your your lead up to it, if you will?
Well, my background is in local authority social work, actually. Well, I started out in community work, always with children and families, with young people, working with young people who were having challenges and difficulties, and in social work, doing a number of different jobs in social work over the years. But finding that I wasn't getting the same sense of fulfillment from that, and trying to think, I'm getting on a bit now in age, and I was thinking, I just need to stick this out now. But there was something gnawing at the back of my head that I needed a change. And so I prayed in church on the Sunday, and that week I happened to see the job advert for this post at Crossreach, and I just felt that was a message, that there was something different for me to do. And so I took it, and it was a big step to move away from local authority structures to Crossreach, but I have never looked back. That was 3 and a bit years ago, and it's been a wonderful change for me. It's given me a new lease of life, and just that feeling of being able to express my Christianity in the workplace, and to see God's love enacted through what we do has just been tremendous for me. It's been really, really rewarding.
Rewarding. I'm sure frustrating and challenging at times as well.
Of course, yes. It always is, but that's where the rewards come. It's from overcoming challenges, isn't it?
Yeah, and I suppose that transfers from to every workplace.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and how I always like to kind of try and end with asking people how we as a church at Erskine Parish Church, how we can pray for you and your work, and the wider work, what you see as the needs that if we are going to be praying, what we can pray for.
Yeah, thanks, David. And prayer is so powerful and so needed. And there is a prayer diary that Crossreach produce, so people can access that. And I do believe it's available online as well. But yes, please do. If you can pray for the families that we work with and pray for the children that we work with, that they do receive comfort and they do feel a sense of belonging and that they do feel loved. Then that would be really very much appreciated. And also for the staff, obviously, who, especially during COVID, who have really gone the extra mile to ensure that the relationships are maintained. If you could pray for them as well, we would be really grateful.
Definitely. Well, Sheila, thank you. It's been really informative, but I think also quite moving for us to see just how much work is done in the name of Christian love to make a lot of people's lives better through these times, through the work of Crossreach's families work. So thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it. Assure you of our prayers and all the very best.
Thanks, David. It's been a pleasure.